Hey guys, it's David R. Becker here. Happy Sunday, and hope you get that extra hour of sleep. That was really good, actually. Good thing I didn't. Well, it was very good that we had an extra hour of sleep today. Anyways, we're going to be doing this scene of Fisherman, and I gotta say, I found this new place online, and I'll put it in my newsletter this week. Again, I always looking for photos for my class, so that we have something different and new to paint. And that's probably one of the hardest things I do is trying to find pictures for us to paint, and that are also hard and also not too hard, but something different each time. And so this one is very different, and this comes from a site online. I think it's called Cake, something like Cake Photos or something. It was very interesting because these are all AI pictures, all AI, all done. So it's AI, and so they're free again. They're royalty free pictures, images, and stuff. And it's always good to have these different versions for my students to paint, because I really can't take a lot of these pictures. That are so well done. I can't do this picture I can't get this picture of these fellows on the ship, stuff. I wouldn't be able to ever get them. And so it's kind of neat that that's available for the artist, and especially for my students, because it's boring if you're always doing the same thing, always doing the same kind of subject matter. And so it always gives me it gives me a chance to try something different. And so I'm going to try this one. And let me go to our tabletop and just show you what it is, if you haven't seen the front yet. But it's these guys, and I'm not sure how the AI does this and stuff, but it's not about the AI for me. It's about trying to figure out how I'm going to do a watercolor of it. And so what I want to see is I want to try to be doing these people in the background. If you look at this image, you see the people in the background, the guys working in the back. They're all kind of soft edge, right? And they're kind of blurry. And that is probably one of the hardest things to do in watercolor, is keeping it working wet into wet and getting those people to look like they're out of focus. And it's like we can do that with watercolor when we do work wet into wet. And so that's one of the things I'm going to try to do today. And this again is not a paint along. It's usually just my demo. I'm calling myself Demo David. So I'm giving myself a handle like the Pete the Street, and I think I'm gonna call myself Demo David, and so because I do a lot of demos and stuff. So we're gonna see about doing this and wet into wet. And I'm looking at this section. There's right here. There's one of the nets, and I can probably stop right there. But first, I'm gonna do my lights all over. You get my lights in there. But when I go to do this part of the people, I want to see if I can't right away get that in there while it's all wet. And I am working on a board, which is probably going to be harder. I don't know why I work on a board today, but I just decided I had it laying around. And so I'm working on a board, which is harder because it doesn't absorb as much. And so when you have a paper that absorbs a little bit more, you can then, it stays wet longer, and it also makes your edges softer, easier. When you have a board that's a little bit harder, almost not hot press, but not totally cold press like on paper, it kind of sits on top. The paint sits on top, and it's a little bit harder to get that wash to be soft, kind of. So you gotta practice. That's one of the things, you just gotta practice, and that's what this is all about today. So I'm practicing to do this light things here, this wet into wet, and trying to get that all going. Now the sun is right here, right by this guy, and so I'm going to put the sun right there too. I think it's kind of neat because I like how it sparkles off the fish in the pails or baskets and stuff. And so I'm going to just take that and put it right down there. So I'm going to wet the surface, and I'm going to wet around the sun. I'm going to keep the sun white of the paper, and then I'm going to take, and I'm using this palette right now. I'm so excited about my new palette that I don't have it with me right at the moment. I'm building 3 new palettes for myself that are all the same, because this is one I shipped out, or I took to one of the plein air events, and so it was a little bit lighter, so I didn't have to pay for so much postage on it, because I needed 2, because then I was heading somewhere else, and I shipped my paints ahead of time, and so this is the reason I'm using this now, because my other one's in the car, and I was too lazy to go get it. So we're going to do this, and that's kind of a weird yellow, isn't it? Because it's too strong, and so I add white to my yellow. See, I put white into the yellow. It dulls it down, or buy a yellow that's not as vibrant, like a Hansa yellow. I think is a less vibrant. And so I'm going to start with yellow, white, then to yellow. Then I'm going to go to like more of a gold. And I figured that out yesterday because I made some say yellow or orange, but it's not really orange that you want. You want a gold. So quinacridone gold, which is, where's my quinacridone gold on this palette? See, that's why you want to have all your palettes the same, and I'm getting so excited about having the same palette for everything. And this gold has, quinacridone gold has green in it because that's what I use to make my greens. And I have no place to mix either on this palette because I usually use a piece of plexiglass, and that's what actually got me doing the plexiglass thing. And so here I'm going to take a little bit of gold and put the gold right by next to the yellow. You can also put a little bit of orange in there. And I hope there's somebody watching, but if you watch later, then it's fine too. But I know it's like we all slept in. I slept in, and luckily I remembered then that it was. I always forget this all the time, and so then you're getting up way too late. Or no, you got you really. Now it's good. The fall is good. It's the spring when I always mess up. I'm always late for something. All right, so see, I'm just going to go right over these people's faces because their heads and everything's going to be darker. And so I'm just wetting it and getting the sky right now. And again, it's a little bit lighter than I'm making it. So I'm just going to go in there with white. And I use white over it because it dull it down. I know it can be done with the white of the paper. But when this yellow is so vibrant, I tend to... I want to wash, but I want to wash so I can regulate the edges and stuff, and so I do that with making more pigment. And so with more pigment, what I do is I use the pigment, the amount of pigment of white, to make it so I can control it more. See how it's in, and it's a little bit too yellow yet. I gotta get more gold in there. So I get more gold. And it's a board, and so it's not soaking in as much, and so it's easier also to get watermarks because the water's sitting on top and it's not absorbing in. It's not staying really wet for a real long time, so it's a little bit harder to work with this kind of paper. Though I do like the feel of it because it does make your colors don't soak in as much. So then it also makes the color more vibrant. And you get to see the pigment more because it doesn't soak into the paper as much. Boy, my quinacridone gold is really dirty. Look at how dirty it is. It's got all the kinds of colors in there. Quinacridone gold is a phenomenal color, though, because it's like gold, and you can make a great green with it. And that right here is the water line, so I kind of want to make that the blue. So... this is a little bit too dark, but that's okay. I'm trying to get that really glow of the sun right in the middle here. And nothing else should be that white then. So that's how I'm going in here and just making everything else darker than that white. And I'm doing it with yellow, which is too vibrant here. Because look at that, look at the sky. It really is light. And it's not a vibrant yellow. It's a very dull yellow. And this over here is actually too gold. And let's put some violet in there. And so what we'll do is we'll go from the yellow to the violet, like a gray yellow. But it'll probably turn a little green because violet has blue in it. And if anybody's here and wants to ask questions, please ask questions. That's what I'm here for. Let me go look at this. Hey, Maria. Hey, Pamela. Looks like you gave yourself a new name too, Maria. I'm making because there's all these people that have names like these. They have these handles now online, like Squash Gouache and Pete the Street. And I was thinking I should give myself one too. And so I'm going to go with Demo David. Because I demo a lot. I mean, I do mostly for my students and stuff. Now, while this is wet, I'm going to go in here now and I'm going to try to get a little bit of the look of these ropes and stuff, and I can go right to this. There's one line right here that's going to be. Let me just re-wet this again. This is that board that really doesn't work well with wetting too much, but oh well. So now I'm going to take my smaller brush and I'm going to try to grab some of those colors, and it's going to be like a little bit of gold right here because those ropes are not black right by the sun. So I'm going to go here. I'm just going to take these orange and this gold and make these little ropes. Your other YouTube account. It's kind of a neat handle, so you should go with it. Let's see, we're going to take this rope down here, bring this down, and see now it's soft edge, right? And so I'm going to go and do these ropes first. That should be a little bit darker, so I'll take a little bit of violet. And see, when if you're always using different palettes, I always don't know what I'm going for. And that's like I'm so excited about getting my new palette made, because then I can, every palette I have will be the same. I'm going to make 3 of them. A studio one for my plein air, and one for to take around, just in case, to my classes and such. There's nothing more, complicated. I can't find my violet, so I'm just putting it down and see if I can find my violet. I know it's in here somewhere. That's blue, 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 blue. Is this violet? No, that's blue too. This is black. It must be this one. Oh, there we go. It's next to the black, so some of the black got into the violet. And you don't see my mixing tray, but it's right underneath it. It's just a piece of plexiglass, and that's what made me realize I could use plexiglass for my palette and buy those little tube things or pan things. All right, I gotta do this faster because this is starting to dry now. And this one is back there. See how you're getting a nice soft edge? Because it's wet. And, I have to hurry up because now it's starting to dry a little bit. Or I'll take my mister. Where's my mister? No, I don't see my mister right now. So I got to re-wet the whole thing again with my brush. I'm going to use my bigger brush and just wet the surface underneath here. This is the part of watercolor that is the toughest to learn, is wet in the wet, and being able to use the water to soften your edges, and you don't soften it. You don't soften the edges. You just let the water soften the edges. And it's about the amount of pigment you use so that it bleeds only so far. And back here, I'm using the orange, and if it's right over the sun, it just disappears because that's optical scatter. So it looks like it burns out the lines, because it's so bright that it burns out the look of the lines. Or you can make them really, really, really light. And so then they go down, and I'll take a little bit of the color then too. Now these people I'm going to do with a round brush because they're a little bit darker, but they are still in the warm tone, right? In the background it's warm by the sun, and the rest is cool as it goes away from there. So this guy right here, I'm just going to try to build him with pigment, thicker pigment. So you don't put that much water in your brush at that time, so you just go in there and kind of draw him. You're drawing him in wet wash. And so he'll be soft edged. Get a little violet in there too. And see, I'm just going to wet him up, and then there's another rope coming down here. And like I said, this is tough. This is this is a little bit tougher because you have to time everything on how fast it's drying, how much pigment to the water ratio you have in your brush. It's all, and getting the right color and doing it pretty fast. I mean, you have to do this pretty fast. There's another guy right here, and they're out of focus, right? You don't see any features. You don't see anything. You just see the outer shape of these people.
and it is soft edged. And so you also don't want to put a really hard edged line there either, like a pencil line. You don't want to do that either because then it makes it look like a hard edge. This is all soft and it's just bleeding away. And if you don't get the exact color, that's okay. Get the right value. Color, like I said, is tough sometimes to get the right color. And so worry more about the value. And edges. The edges are, nice to have the edges right. And this person is holding, his arm's coming out here and he's holding something. And if it gets a little bit where it doesn't look like the photograph, who cares? Just make it, it's going to be people. It's a person out there. So if you don't get exactly like you see there, that's fine. Don't worry about that. Here's his arm coming in, and then it looks like it's a little bit darker. And then some of these ropes get a little bit darker right after they get down here. They go a little bit darker. So I'm just going to take a couple of these ropes. It's fun teaching yourself stuff like this, because I don't care if the painting comes out. I'm looking to see if I can't do this. Do things that test your abilities. Do things that are tough, and then learn how to do those. Because if I did this with all hard edges, I wouldn't get that look of the nice softness that you get in the picture. So that's what I'm going for. I'm going for the softness and the wet into wet look. Make it really warm, his face. This guy's, and as it goes forward, it's going to get tighter and tighter, or harder edged as you go forward, so that's okay. And a little bit darker, a little bit more contrasty because the contrast fits in there. Now this is, because once you get this done, this is done. You can't go back into this area because you have to re-wet it all again, and that's where the sprayer comes in, the mister sprayer. The misting sprayer. Here we go. Put his head a little bit darker. This guy's head is pretty red, pretty warm because he's this close to the sun. So I'm just going to use a little bit, and I'm using my brush pretty dry because I'm not wetting my brush, because if I wet my brush then I have too much water and it's just going to bleed all over the place. So, and just enough to make sure that I'm getting enough pigment down, and also not enough water so it spreads around. That's the hard part, is not getting enough water, making it too wet and getting too much water in your brush. I work with that with my students. I tell them try to work with a wet canvas and just see what you can do with a wet piece of paper, and then see if you can't get things soft edged, and we'll get the edge to just bleed so far. Now watch what happens if I go too wet. See what happens when you go too wet? It kind of just it'll bleed, and it'll bleed so far, and so you have to watch out. But do it wrong to see how to do it right. Basically, people are always like, "Oh, I just can never do it." I go, "Yeah, but just keep on trying and work it enough so that you have enough water and enough pigment. Because all you have to do is make it thicker pigment. The thicker the pigment, the less it's going to bleed all over the place." And this gets all blurry right here, right? And I add water also as I'm doing this. See how they look in the background now? And I also lighten the value, a little bit more lightening of the value than it is in the photo, only because, that's another way of making it look soft edge, is don't make it so high contrast. And here we got some violets coming away. Now, as you're getting away from the sun, it's not going to be as warm. And so I got this nice coolness here. This part right here should be a little bit darker. It looks like there's also a basket here or something, a fish that he's holding on to. And this kind of guy just bleeds away. Then there's these ropes. And once you get to a certain point, and I notice now I can't go back in here now because I lost the shine. And as soon as you lose the shine, you know that's too late then. You can't go back in and soften it because you're going to get watermarks, because anything that's wetter than that surface is watermarks. So I'll wait for that part to dry, and I'll go over here and re-wet that, because there's a line right here I can use to stop at. It's a little bit harder edged, and I can use that to stop and start. Take a little bit of the violet here now and just kind of go in here, go around this. I know it's kind of detail-y, like I'm not doing a really big area, but I can't do that. I can't do a big area here. This is my center of interest. Well, actually, this guy's the center of interest right here, and that's the secondary interest.
but they should look like they're out of focus. So it's a little bit harder to do these big washes. I did the big washes of the sky, but I can't. You can't do everything, and so I can't do my big lights down here. Oh, I can do that now. Yeah, I could probably do that now. Let me just get this. Yeah, I better do this lights down here. But most of this, if you squint your eye, this is all dark. So it's just the fish that I have to do right now that are lighter. And they're a little bit white, and they're a little kind of lavendery. And there's also white on them, so I'm just going to put these little light warm up on top here. A little bit warmer up here. Morning, Pat. If you guys got questions, just let me know. I also like this image only because, you know, I like boats. I was actually going to do a boat, but then I saw this image, and it was on that. It was on this. I'll put it in my newsletter. The website with these AI images. This is all AI. This is an AI image. So there's no photographer who took the photo. This is just created by AI. And I just happened upon this site. It's like a stock photo place, but it's all AI images instead of stock photos. Very interesting photos too, you know, because it's just, I mean, look at this shot. And maybe this shot could never be, actually, maybe this is all wrong, but I just like the whole softness of it and the hard edges of it. So that's what got me to make this, or do this one, because it's just I like the look of it. Let's get a little bit of light in here. I have to remember what the name of it was. I'll have to give you that and think it's something like Cake Stock or something. It's a really weird name. Or Cookie Stock. I forget. And there's my lights. There's my fish. And again, I squint my eye a lot, and I'm squinting at the photo that I have in front of me, that you guys see right there on the right here. This photo right there. I just look at that and I squint my eye at it. I didn't make this black and white, but if you squint your eye, it makes it black and white automatically. You can see all your no tan look. All right, I think we're time to do our darks now. And let me do this guy, and so I'm going to wet this whole area again, because I also want to get the water that's in the background that I kind of totally missed. So I'm going to take my violet and kind of go across here. Let me wet it. Let me wet the whole area up there. Again, I took this spot right here. This little line right here, this netting, is a good place to stop. And then I can just take it and wet that whole area. So I'm going to wet this whole area again. Right to that thing. Because I want to keep it soft back there. In the front, I don't need to keep it soft. But I do like to have this all soft too. This is all out of focus. This down around this guy. But I'm going to do my water up here. And when I get to the net, it has to be a little bit... See, when I'm using, this is all wet and wet, right? But if I use enough pigment on my brush and I don't have that much water in my brush, then it's okay. And then make it look like there's a netting in front. I'm going to make this part a little bit lighter. And this over here by his face, it's really light. You can barely see the edge of the water because the net's in front of his face. And it goes down, and there's some waves down here, and it gets darker, a little bit more blue-like down here. There's waves, and you don't see it when it gets into the net. The net blocks all that, but then the net is also darker right here, so I can just go right into the net at first. Get some waves in here. And this is that paper that makes those dots, or the board, so nothing to do about that, but that's okay. We're just going to put the webbing and netting. I'm just taking my dirty palette color and just putting it across here and get some of the netting look. And then I finally get this line in there. That's the net. You know, I always say, you know, work on things that you know and love. I don't know this really well, so I do have to guide myself a little bit on the picture, on the photo, because, you know, I've never been on a boat like this. I don't know if this is even a a thing. If this is like how they get some fish somewhere. So if I would know that, if I was a fisherman and that's what I really loved, then I could be. The painting would turn out even better because I would know what's going on there. It's good to know your subject matter and know what it is about and what's happening in it. Especially when you're drawing it too. When you're drawing it, it's because you can make things up then. I'm going totally by the photo, not the photo. It's a photo, but a made-up photo. One of the biggest things I'm teaching myself lately is to work this wet into wet thing. I really find it very important to get things blurry out of focus. And that's one thing that oil painters have, is they have this brush stroke that they start out with, and they make it all really soft, or kind of soft edged, with a lot of just brush strokes everywhere, and it gets tighter and tighter as you go along. Where watercolors go big washes like this, but we can't get that brush stroke kind of look, and so we have to kind of. That's like I'm putting that into my work, is that I'm putting like the thick pigment I'm doing with gouache later on into my painting, so I get a little bit of that oil painting look that I think is pretty cool. So now I'm gonna get the darks in here, because oil painters start with dark, right? And so they put the light swashes on top of their darks, and so it looks really cool when they do that. Now here we're gonna get dark. This is all out of focus, so I got to keep it wet. Again, keeping it wet so that it looks out of focus and undefinable. You can't really define what's happening there, and so you just make it dark and blurry. Photographers do it all the time with their depth of field, right? And you can always get the depth of field so that it looks blurry and out of focus, so you can't see what's happening there. And that helps a lot when you're doing painting, because if there's a part that you're not quite sure what's happening there and you just out of focus it. And also bringing things together, like the washes together as one big wash, is always a really good thing. So do some lines in here. You notice I'm working cooler, warmer. All these shadows here now are going to be. Here's my big brush here. So now I'll get my middle tone darks. Wondering how you make sure your paper is wet enough for wet on wet effects. I notice that even if I add a lot of water and apply evenly and wait to start painting, it still dries too fast. Well, that it does. It depends again about the atmosphere that you're in. Is it really hot outside? Is it raining? So that has a lot to do with it, but it's just add a lot of water. And don't start right away. Add a lot of water on your paper so that it soaks in, and then let it all bleed together and kind of soak in. That way it's going to stay a little bit if you let the pigment sit on top of the paper a little bit, because it takes a little bit of time. A lot of people paint right away, and you should wait a little bit, because you got to wait for the pigment to soak into the paper, for one. And then also using a lot of pigment, then it makes it so that it feels, you can tell as soon as, if you use a lot of pigment, you can tell if you put it down into water. If there's not enough water, it's not going to bleed out. And so you have to put enough water. And I think most students don't put enough pigment. They put in plenty of water. They're always dipping into the water. It's almost too much water. And then everything gets out of focus, right? Or it gets... because it just bleeds out because you don't have enough pigment in your brush. Water doesn't ever seem to be the biggest problem for students, is because they don't actually make it enough pigment in their brush so that it can float in the water. You just got to watch out that pigment in your brush, or maybe the water in your brush, compared to what you have already on the paper. Like if you know you have it on the paper, then you got to put less in your brush. It's got to be on your paper to look and see. That's what I always do. I can see the shine in the area. Like this is now, I've lost the shine, so I can't, if I go with my any kind of water in this part, it's going to get a watermark. But I can take pure pigment though, but it's still wet enough where I can make a line See, I can make a line like that because it's still wet enough, but I can't use too much pigment because then it won't float. So it's that difference between too wet or too dry, and how much paint you have in your brush, basically. And that's what you practice. You just keep on practicing it, and you just do more and more paintings, and you'll learn. Everybody learns it. You kind of can see then automatically. It becomes an automatic thing that you can tell how much water's down. And as soon as you put the brush down, all of a sudden it bleeds all over the place. It's either too wet or too little pigment. If you have too little pigment in your brush and you have a lot of water, it's just going to bleed all over the place. And you don't get it exactly perfect every time. It's just, you just deal with what you have down, and you may have to put more water down, you may have to put more pigment in your brush. And then how do you learn all that? It's just practice. Just practice, practice, practice. Just do painting. Painting after painting after painting. That's the biggest thing I learned when I was away this summer and painting with all these professionals, is that they paint non-stop. These people don't stop painting. You'd think they would get sick of it or tired of it. No, not even the least. They just love to paint, and they love to do the next project, and they're trying to get another project done, just to see what's going to happen in the thing that you're doing then, because you're always going to have a different idea, problems. Like this was totally different. I've never done this before, where I've done people out of focus like that. So it's just another project, and you're trying to learn how to do. I didn't put my lights in first, so now I'll put my lights right there. And again, remember I said this is going to be cooler in the front here, so this basket is warm, but then make this a little bit cooler down here. I'm using a lot of purple because, that's my favorite color. But I can put also a little bit of blue in there. Oh, that was a green. Yeah, I gotta get my other palettes going. This is ridiculous, using a palette I don't even know where the colors are. Sometimes it's good to try different colors and different palettes, because then you're so used to always dipping into the same color for certain things. But that's a good thing, knowing where your colors are. When you don't know where your colors are and you're getting colors that you don't want, then, it could be like you find another color that you maybe will like later. But it's not great for, making a color scheme that you really know that you love. And so this has got these lines in here. And this is this basket right here. Just the shadow of the basket. I'm working it all wet into wet. I'm just making it all kind of work together. You can get a little bit of orange in there, just to get a little bit of that color like reflecting in there. Actually, more in the light area here. I should put a little bit more orange in there. And I'm not sure if this is water or if there's snow on the ground there, but it doesn't matter. If I don't know, I don't know. And so just blur it and it'll be fine. I know these are fish. I know these are baskets. So just worry more about those then. Get them in there really nicely. And looks like they're very blue and very purpley blue. So I'll go in there and make the shape of a fish. Maybe a couple fins in there. They're just round kind of shapes in there, so I'm not going to be going in there and getting too detailed. I'm just getting negative painted shapes of light. So I'm going negative painting this, and this is a little bit of the dock here, a bit lighter. Yesterday in class, I actually was showing people how to pull out some of the paint. And they're astonished that you can take and pull out like color. Like, let's say right here, we want to make that light right now. It's a little bit damp, so I'm just going to take my brush and make it really dry. And I'm just going to pull out like a light. See, I just pull out that little bit of light, see? And it's possible when you're using enough pigment. If you don't use enough pigment, you can't pull it out. But if you use enough pigment, you can pull out paint. And especially on board like this, and the paper I use, Stonehenge Aqua, you can really make it, it's easy to do it on those things. Let's get this guy going here, because you got the big middle tones done now. And now we'll get the big middle tone on him, and then we'll do our dark details. And the dark details are going to be part of him too. So let's, looks like his outer edge here is cool. I'm using my smaller brush that I'm drawing now. I'm drawing this guy. And then his top part is really warm.
And his hair is really messy, so I could have given him a hat, but I thought, well, everybody else has got a hat in this picture, and I'm going to not give him a hat. And let's put his flesh tone in there. It looks like he's really in shadow, so it's really warm. So let's give him a little. I usually use pink and orange to make like a salmon color for flesh tone. And this is also in shadow, so I'll do the lightest part of his face, so features first. He's got a beard, a mustache and a beard. So we're going to go right over that because that's going to be darker than the flesh tone. So I'm just going to try to get the shape of his face first. Go right into his mustache. Go right into his beard. And he's got a nice shiny light there. From the front of his beard, it's really light. And so I'll make that golden again. So let's make that golden. And it goes down. And bring this all together. It's all in shadow. His hair will be darker. His beard will be darker. But again, I'm going from light to dark. So make a big wash, get it all light to dark, and then you add the dark on top of the light. That's why watercolors work light to dark, so that you can do stuff like this. You make the light part, and then you go in there later, get the dark parts, which will be the details. And so the light is on the edge. Bring that all together. Cool in the back here, away from the sun is cooler. And you notice I don't use exact colors of the object that I see, and I'm just making it what I've used already throughout the entire painting. Maybe it's happening because I'm trying it as a first layer for my gouache painting, and I use gouache for wet on wet. Perhaps it's the paper. Yeah, I mean gouache also covers more, and so it's a little bit more intense pigment. You have a lot more pigment in gouache if you're using Holbein, especially because they use a lot thinner or more grinded pigment, so it's really condensed a lot, and so it's going to absorb up the water just as like a sponge, because it's like, so you definitely have to probably use more water. You have to come to one of my things. I have to watch you, see how you're painting. That way I can tell for sure. Let's see, we'll go down here. This guy's got black gloves on, or dark gloves on. So again, that's my light parts. Now I'm going to go in a little bit darker, with a little bit more detail with some of this, his beard, and now it's working wet and wet again, so that's a little bit too wet because that's going to bleed out, and so dry your brush, and that's how come I have my towel on my paper right here. I just get rid of the water in your brush and go back in and get more pigment. Let your brush be dry when you're going back in and making in the waters on your paper already. Like this is already wet. My paper is already wet, so I'm just going in to get the pigment. Grab the pigment and bring it down and just put it into the paper then. And you don't see this guy's hand because it's behind, and this one you do. And right in here is really dark. So I make it a little bit darker right in here by where his stomach is right here. And I'm looking at the picture, I'm doing a figure right now, so I don't want to make them up too much, so I'm looking at the picture to get the drawing right, and looking where the values are, what's brighter and what's darker. I don't have to do the detail part of it, but more or less the big areas. Like when it goes behind the net, or it doesn't actually go behind the net, he's in front of the net, so let's just put this in front of the net. I lost his arm, but that's okay because I'll wipe out a little bit of that. And that'll come when I do detail stage too. When I get to the details, then I can go back in and grab a little bit of chunks of detail. And that's all you need sometimes, is a little bit of time. But look at how his shoulder right over here, and this guy bled while I was in. So that you can also wipe out later on too. Or you can use gouache too later on and make it a little bit thicker, and that's where the gouache comes in. And that's why I'm using a little bit of gouache, because I can't use it all watercolor if I'm going to try to get You know, if I'm not using masking fluid, I'm not pre-planning it as much as I normally have done. So that's how come I'm using a little bit more gouache nowadays. And here, this is dry now, so let's do this part real quickly here over here. And I'll let that other part's dry. Let's get his hand done really quickly. I probably should have waited though, because this is wet. Alright, that's good. This will be dark. The front of his hand is a little bit lighter, so his arm is light right here. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull out, even with my small brush, I can pull out some of the paint and get back my light. See, I'm just getting back my light. I could also do that with gouache later, but I want to just get this to where it's lighter. I'm picking out pigment. I mean, everything we do is about the pigment and how much pigment you use in your brush and how much pigment you put down for watercolor. And then with gouache, it's like oils. Then you're putting it on thick to make the light. And I can still do that too. So, but I like to get the watercolor look first and then the gouache second. See, like his beard right here, it got a little bit too dark. I'm just pulling out those colors while it's still wet. And you can also do it when it's dry. You can pull out colors when it's dry and get back to the white of the paper. And so that's a possibility too. Now these over here, let's get this, there's like a building back here, so let's put that in there real quick. There's a little bit of light shining through, and I can go around that, negative paint that, or later on, like I said, by using gouache, it really makes your watercolor, if you're scared of watercolor, it really takes away all the scaredness that you have to think about, because you don't have to worry about negative painting, because you're going to put it on later with the gouache. And so that's what I tell my students who are really switching to watercolor and they're scared of it, and I'm like, well, you were an oil painter before, so just use some of those techniques in your watercolor. Then it doesn't matter. Nobody's gonna say anything, except you can't submit it to certain watercolor societies because they're oil transparent watercolor society. You can't do it to that, but every other thing you can. I guess they call it water media then. You can call it water media, whatever. I don't care what they want to call it. It's a painting, and basically, if it's a nice painting, that's all you have to worry about. Make it a nice painting. In the background here, I am going to put in a few more things. And now if I work back here and have hard edges, I want to make sure that it's very low contrast. So don't make it very high contrasty. Don't put a really dark back there, because it'll look too much like it's going to come forward then, right? So now we got that done, and I have to put details everywhere, and that's about where I'm at right now. So let's go into our dark details and just get them all done. I'm just going to start going with dark colors, and just, I don't know, where you can start anywhere. I like to usually start in the background and work my way forward, so maybe that's what I'll do. I'll just go back here, get some of this going. This guy he's a little bit darker than everybody else, so let's make him. Put his hand up here. So I am making him a little bit darker, so he's going to be he's not out of focus as much as I wanted him to be, but that's okay. We got the other ones, and I feel really good about those guys. And then this part here, there's a bunch of ropes. But since I just wet this area, I can't go and do really detail there, dark details. So let me just go down here and just start grabbing. And when you do your darks, don't just take one dark color. There's all these colors that are in here, blue, yellows, and use them all in your darks. Make your darks colorful. And I just take the same color, add black to it, or add as complement to it. If I'm using orange and blue, which are complements, then it becomes like a brown, and so that's fine. I've been looking at the time. Let's see. You're just going in there, get details now. And now I also enjoy doing details, because then all of a sudden it becomes something. It's like a puzzle. You're getting the finishing puzzle pieces into the spot where they belong. Basically a painting is a puzzle. It's like a puzzle you put together, and you do the big overall things first. You get smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's fun getting the smaller stuff because it starts looking like something. Like at the end of the puzzle, and it's like, oh, look at that area. Now you can see what it actually is. And so this is a nice dark through here. And sometimes you even do use just one color, but just in that little area. And then while it's wet, don't be afraid of putting other colors into that area then. Like, see how dark that is? And then if I feel like, oh, there should be some color in there, just grab that color and float it into the water. Like, see, I make it a little bit warm on the front. I'll just take this orangey red, and I'll just put it right there. Let it float into the surface. And then where the netting is, it's going to be a little bit lighter because then the netting is a little bit lighter. So I'll make that a little bit lighter. And then it looks like there's some blue or violet going through here. Because this is all part of the net here. This is all the netting on the backside here. And I like how they start out warmer up here. So just there's a little bit of warmth. Bring it down and swipe it. I like the swiping it. You get the texture of the paper. When you learn as a watercolorist to start using more pigment, it's also you learn how to make it thicker. And then you can make so many different kind of textures like this one, where it's not really really wet, and then I just take it across it quickly, and I pick up the paint, the texture of the paper, to make it a little bit textury. But you need enough pigment in your brush, and not so much water, so because the water will soften it. Right? Water softens your strokes, your brush strokes. So having it a little bit thicker lessens the brush stroke. Lessens the softness, I mean. Now this is all dry, so I can just put it, and I'm going to use my rigger brush. That's what you want to use. Your rigger brush for your small details. Your lines. It's the best brush for lines. And get a right amount of pigment and water ratio so that you can just do one brush stroke. There's a bunch of these little things here coming. Lines all over in this thing. This is what I love about this picture. Look at this big knot right here. This is a big knot holding all this ropes together, and then holding the netting. There's a rope here, and if you want to get like a ruler, you can use that if you want to illustrate. I just like to go really fast. There's a pole right here. I'm not sure if that's from in the boat or what it is. Little by little, you just get it more and more detailed. And now, this is the only time you can jump around. Normally, when you're doing your big washes, you can't jump around. You got to go and do that area. Here, you can jump around. It doesn't matter. You can just get parts if you feel like, okay, this part's too wet. Then, you can go there later. And it's basically the only time you can just basically jump around with your brush. When you're doing your big washes, you can't jump around because it gets too wet, too dry, too this and that. And so stick with that area, get it done with your big areas. But details, it's a little bit finer, so you can go in there and spend time in that area. Let's see, let's do this guy here now. Let's get him a little bit detailed because he's the most important guy that we may have to make him look really good. There's his ear. Though he's still wet. Still a little wet. So it shows how wet I work. Is if he's still wet, man, how many minutes ago have I done him? And he's still damp. And then it goes to his mustache, which is dark. And there's a shadow from his mustache onto his beard, and then there's a little light right there. And even he is a little bit out of focus in some spots, so So we'll make it out of focus because, again, I love it when things are out of focus. And all you have to do is wet it. That's his beard. Is part of his bottom of his jacket right here, and then behind here is really dark. Shouldn't be using my rigger brush for that. Such a large area. Always use the brush that's perfect for the area, for the what you're doing. You gotta work with the size of brush. And actually, I forget that's not in front; it's behind. Maybe this part will be in front. We got little things happening there. Look at how far it lightened. Even if you're looking at, I'm looking at my screen, and my boy, things have really lightened up a lot. So I'm gonna go back in with some darks and darken these areas to get them out of focus and dark again. Put some color in there. A little bit more lavender, so that it's in blue. Let's see, this on the side is actually dark. Because you got to go with your value pattern, and that's the most important thing. Is more than the color even, and so you got to get that value pattern. Otherwise, the light doesn't look right. You got to make the light look like what you want it to be. The light is right there, so everything in front of that will be the lightest, and as it goes away from it, it gets darker. Like this whole netting here got really, really light now, right? So I'll just go back in there, and now it's dry, but I can just re-wet it and get a little bit more color in there now, or a little bit more darkness in it. And I know that looks like it's solid black, but it's not. It's just it looks really dark because it's wet. And then when you put the color on top of it, you'll see it's gonna dry again lighter, but you want enough pigment so that it stays a little bit darker this time. And then this goes through there. I mean, there is lightness in it too, but it's mostly, when I squint my eye, it's mostly all dark. So trust when you squint, that's the value you want. This is all too light right there. If you're squinting your eye, this is all dark area. So make it a fun wash again. I'm gonna definitely make it a good wash. Wet it so that it has a lot of granulation happening. Make it a nice granular wash. And sometimes it means putting in lighter colors and then letting them mix in with the dark colors and letting it float. Definitely letting it float, because that's the best look of watercolor, is when pigment floats in water and then it separates the granules. Yeah, the granules. All right, let's see. This is all kind of bluish purple here. Let's make that a little bit darker. See how this is floating still? I made it wet enough that it's floating. You have to compare it to the lights, and compare your darks to the light areas. Don't compare it to this area of light. Compare it to the other parts of light that you have happening through the painting. That's what you compare it to, not that area. The whole painting is one big painting, and it has to all come together as the value pattern of the whole painting, not just that area. A lot of people look too much close into that area and go, oh, that's not that bad. It's pretty dark right there, but not compared to what is out over here. All right, let's get our fish done here. These fish are looking pretty bad. Any questions, guys? Oh, somebody wants to just say one because it just went away. Boy, the advertising in this thing is always so terrible because it always takes my chat away. Let's make this a little bit darker. Give it a kind of a texture for the netting or the basket look. And then the inside fish are kind of bluish silver, And silver is done with grays and blues and stuff. And I haven't used any gouache yet. I haven't used anything thick to where it's like gouache-like. I haven't done that at all yet, and so that can come when I'm doing the light parts or the really, really dark parts later. I can still make it look like that. There is some really dark darks in this fish too, because it goes deep into there, and so it's good to have a little dots of dark in there. Keep a lot of this blue on this side, especially. And again, if I'm losing a lot of the darks or the lights, I can always put them in with opaque. I like all these darks that I have over here now too. I just like the contrast of everything that's happening in this picture. It just is so neat how light and dark things are. And I think I did okay with the soft edges from the background. I think that's, that worked out okay. It's not the best that I've ever done, but it's not bad. It's not bad. And each time you do it, you get better and better. That's how come I want to do this today, and I'll probably try again next, another painting. And here I gotta wipe out this light here, or maybe make it his other arm. Maybe I'll make this another arm. There we go. So you can even change things around a little bit if you feel like this guy. I'll just make it like that and then put his arm going down. I think he's got the other arm there. Put a little bit more definition in looking through the netting. Give him some shadow in his eyes. This is pretty much in shadow over here, and again I didn't do anything with the fish, so I'm going to put some blue there. Fish are slimy, light, light and dark, and so there's a lot of, it's almost like, and they're wet, and so they'd be like a mirror. So you're gonna have a lot of lights and darks in the shape of them too, of a fish. Any last questions? It's getting to be 2 minutes left. Just let me know. And if you have questions afterwards, just put them in the comments section or description section, not in the chat because the chat's not there anymore then. But you can still ask questions there because I'll still answer them. Maybe not right away all the time because I have to get notified that somebody asked a question. It's a little blurry over here, so it's just blurred a little bit. Take my rigger brush, a few more lines back here. And again, making those back there, I'm gonna go for pink and orangey lines back here. And I made a mess on my paper, so I'm just gonna go over that, even though there's probably not a line there. And this right here looks a little bit blurry. It should be a little bit blurry, so I'm just going to take it right over the top of that and make it look a little bit blurry. Okay, this is all weird right here. His face a little bit better. Make his hair a little messier. All right, now I'm going to go in with lights. I'm going to go in with white. And this is not dark enough. First, let me get that darker. The fish should be darker down there because he's in shadow, right? A bit darker in here. His arm would throw a shadow on across the fish. This is all wet, so I can't get the super detail in there yet, but I can do that after. But let me just show you. I'm going to take a little bit of this light gray and white. I'm going to make it thick on my brush too. I make this really thick, and then I go across things that are lit up. You know, like the fish are kind of lit up with little light parts. They're almost like dots, like their bright side is lit up. And you try to get that at first, but a lot of times it's hard to get it when you're negative painting it. But then I go in here with this white, and it's easy, really, to go in. And there's a couple of things in here that are lit up, right? So you're just gonna. And this is where gouache comes in. I'm now putting in gouache because this is the part that's shiny. So I'll put these fish a little shiny, even though it's still wet. And then when it comes to the shininess of these things, I'm going to make that a little bit more yellow-white. So I'll take a little bit of white and yellow. And then I'll, especially right here, you just kind of go in there. Brush it in there. All right, I think that's about it, guys. I'm just putting in the highlights. Also some white wires. Hold on, I'm almost done. And if you're doing this in your studio and you want it to be super fine detailed, you just work slower. You don't do it in an hour. You do it in a couple hours. You maybe do. I think average painting, like outside, is about 2 to 3 hours. Inside, I find it's a little bit longer because you want to be a little bit tighter. So then it could be like maybe 3 to 4 hours when you're working inside. And you give yourself time. You don't have to do this fast. I'm just doing this fast because otherwise you have to stay around forever here in the morning on a Sunday morning. So now you can go out and. All right, and one more thing here, and then we're done. I know we're over time. I'm just going to give this a little bit of a swipe of the violet. And then this should be really dark. One more dark here, and then we're good. Can't tell you how, I'm in every class I do now, live class, I'm always saying darker because really watercolorists don't use everything dark enough. You really need to get some darks in there because it dries 100% lighter. So we're always thinking it's really dark, but then we look back and we're like, oh, not dark enough. And so that's one thing that's hard to get used to as a watercolor, is that you do have to make it look wrong to make it look right. It has to look 20% darker, not the right color, or not the right value, and it's got to look like it's too dark, but then it dries to a perfect value. I just got a little bit darker, and we're good. A little bit darker here. Make this a little bit more wood-like, and so I'm just scraping across the paper to get it more textury. And there you have it, guys. Any more questions, just put it into the comment section, and have fun painting. And actually do a lot of practice painting. And watch for my website, or for my newsletter. I'm going to be showing you, and actually you just watch on YouTube. I'm going to be building my palette this week and showing you how to make the perfect palette that you can just do for yourself. And if you have a certain size you want, it's just perfect for that. And so then I will see you next Thursday for our paint along. All right, and it's going to be hopefully a scene where you're going to have to use the same techniques where you're working wet in the wet, because it is going to be a spooky. What do we say, Maria? It's going to be a spooky, like foggy area. All right. I actually took a shot
And that one morning I was going, and it's going to be like a railroad, and it's going to be wet in a wet, and so we're going to do that next week, next Thursday. So see me then. All right. We'll talk to you later, guys.